This is the ISG Digital Dish.
Welcome to Digital Dish, a podcast for women's voices and perspectives in the digital world. We interview women in all industries because digital affects them all. As hosts, we want to share our passion and humor about the digital world we're part of, and we each bring a unique perspective and view from women in all parts of business. You're going to hear topics ranging from technical to organizational challenges, anything that speaks to how women are tackling issues to improve their environment.
I'm Jeanne Cuff. I have a deep curiosity on how women approach their careers in digital, and I'd love to hear their perspective on what they do and how they think about the careers. And of course, talking to smart women is fun.
I'm Lois Coatney, and I love hearing these interviews and bringing both a historical view and a future perspective to those interviews. It's so great to have such a variety of women who do so many things in their digital careers.
And I'm Julie Fernandez. I have a human resources perspective, and I really like to think about how these discussions affect people and organizations.
Together, we wanted to make sure smart women and their point of views were being heard.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to ISG Digital Dish. I'm here with my co-host, Lois Coatney, and Julie Fernandez. Julie, I almost forgot your name.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So today I have an interview with a woman that I've known for a while. Her name is Pam Kendall, and she's the founder of a fashion piece called Qui Collection. Yes, Q-U-I, which in French means who.
Oh.
What I do want to talk about, though, before that, leading up to it, is the fact that entrepreneurship has really changed and grown since the pandemic. So we've see the pre-pandemic women, the last 10 years, they grew like 5 times every year, and it was 42% of U.S. businesses with 9.4 million employees and 1.9 trillion in revenue. So huge numbers there. Post-pandemic, the entrepreneurship is up year over year from January 2020 to 2021. They say it's up 73% for applications for entrepreneurs.
Wow. Well, I think, we've just a lot of frustration probably with just, where you were, big business, being in an office and looking for alternative ways to do something. I don't know if I'm surprised or not, but that's pretty exciting.
Well, when you think about all the women we've interviewed who are like coaches or freelancers, and I suddenly went, oh, we've been talking to these entrepreneurs all along. They've just been in more service-oriented life coaching and really wonderful things like that. But what's interesting about Pam is she's starting a product company, and that's a little different. So I thought that was interesting too.
I got to imagine that when COVID hit and folks lost their job or left the workforce to take care of family and cover, there's a pretty big impact of nothing to lose,
Right.
You've already lost the thing that you were worried about losing. And so that alone, triggers some of those entrepreneurial spirit, right? I'm already halfway into something different. So let's just take it the rest of the way.
Right. So the only other thing I wanted to say was that a lot of the women who started these businesses did it because they're passionate about something. So they've started nonprofits and everything else. But I found this list on Madame Noir on 6 traits that are really, they found in most of the entrepreneurs. And this is not just women, this is everybody. So one is there's a greater purpose than money, which to me is about passion. And I think that Pam really addresses it. She's really passionate about the people who make the clothes. Are we seeing them? That's why it's key. It means who's making these things. There's focus on what you can control. So she's found all these vendors and people to work with that are environmentally sustainable and they're getting paid well. She's trying to get them the best pay. So she talks about that. Risk tolerance. They've got a very high ability to handle risk, which is cool. Self-efficacy. Now, this one I struggle with a little bit. It's believing in yourself, but also having the capability. So really kind of I don't know, Julie, what are those assessments they do in HR to say, where are you? Do you believe this? Can you actually carry it out? Right?
Yeah.
And the need to achieve, and this is like really, the need to achieve is like, okay, I'm fed up with this. So, for example, I'm fed up with things that they build that are too high for the normal woman to reach, like in airplanes, those silly airplane overhead bins. Like, I I want to start an organization. Anybody can have this idea for free. You can fix that by having some more women engineers, but that's separate. And then the sixth thing is being optimistic, believing that they can make a change.
Wow. Well, I'm interested in hearing from her, just knowing those six. I'm guessing, as you were kind of alluding to, we're probably going to hear all six of those coming through her talk. So it'll be interesting to see what she has done.
Has my list, and I'm ready to check it off as I hear them, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Such a geek.
Okay. Well, I mean, I love the fact that we get together and we talk about all these women, and we've had so many women entrepreneurs on it, and it's just like a focus on a different type of entrepreneurship that I'm really excited for you guys to hear this interview, because it's interesting. And she says in the fall, look for Qui Collections.
Oh,
in the fall.
excellent. Well, excited to hear.
Yeah.
It's going to be clothing from like the desktop up. That's what I'm imagining.
The Zoom clothing. Zoom clothing.
Zoom clothing. Awesome. Can't wait.
Enjoy the interview. Welcome, everybody. Today, I'm thrilled to have Pam Kendall, who's the founder of Qui Collection. And Pam is a entrepreneur. She's doing a startup, and I was really excited to hear she was doing this. And I know you've been working on this for a couple of years, so yes. I don't want to act like, it just happened 3 months ago.
Yeah, nothing seems to happen that quickly, right?
Tell me about it. But unless it's COVID, that happens that fast.
I was going to say, coming off of COVID,
yeah. So,
I think everybody pushed the pause button for a while.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you because I really am interested in how women are like driving this whole entrepreneurial environment here now in the States. So I just thought it'd be great to talk to you. And really what I wanted to focus on initially was you had this little tiny idea. It's a little gem of an idea. Tell me how you blew it out, how you got it to where you are, and how long ago did you start?
So I've actually probably had this germ, as you say, of an idea, which doesn't sound so good, but for over 10 years. But, I spent my time doing a lot of philanthropy and volunteer work, a little bit of work here and there, and raising 3 children. But the idea just kept evolving. And I've always had a lifelong passion for fashion, specifically independent designers. And anytime I travel, I always seek out the local boutiques, wanting to get to know the designers and the shop owners. And I just love the people and the human connection. I love, what's happening behind the scenes. Even when buying art, we buy a lot of art when we travel, and I like to meet the artist. So I like to know the people. I like to know the history and the stories behind people and things. I grew up in a large family. I loved and cherished my clothing.
You kind of had to.
Yeah, I was going to say
I'm from a big family.
Yeah, and I think you kind of had to back in the day when I was growing up, and probably the same as you. I mean, we didn't have a lot of opportunities to buy clothes. It was a way different environment back then. My clothing was either hand sewn by my mother, or I got hand-me-downs from my sister.
Yep.
Or the big excitement of the year was that once a year back to school shopping trip. And oh my gosh, that was such a treasure. Not only for the fashion, but it was the, one special time we got to spend alone with our mom. When there's 6 kids, you're fighting for that time. But
I learned to sew, just so you know. I got hand-me-downs that I hated, so I learned to sew, just so you know.
Good for you.
Yeah, so.
That's great. Well, I treasured my clothes so much. I still have many of the clothes I wore. And my 2 daughters have worn many of those childhood dresses. So I still have them, and maybe one day
That's wonderful.
Be worn, by a grandchild. I actually even have photos of my daughters and I in the same dresses. Those wonderful smocked dresses. They were so fabulous, weren't they?
Yeah.
And actually to this day, my girls love to shop my closet, as they say, and they call them Pam-me-downs. So there you have it. I've always had a passion for clothing and all things vintage. And again, the stories behind them. I began collecting vintage fabric when we renovated the home we live in now, which is an 1890 Queen Anne home. And I amassed this collection of vintage fabric. And so the wheels just started turning some 18 years ago or whatever, when we first moved into this house and renovated it. What am I going to do with all this extra fabric? I mean, I used a lot, for pillows and curtains and furniture coverings. And then I just decided to do something with that fabric, but also marry into my idea of, or my love of fashion. I've always loved the simplicity and versatility of a well-made tee. Figure you can pair it with anything from a jean to a dressy skirt. You can wear it day or night. So I started thinking about that. That's what I love to wear. You can put on a statement skirt or a statement jacket, and the t-shirt is just kind of a standalone piece that can be worn all year long, all seasons, and it can be worn day or night. So I started thinking about this and coming up with the idea of taking a basic, simple, classic tee and turning it into a one-of-a-kind, unique, special garment. And so what I've done is created this t-shirt that each one is a one-of-a-kind, because each one is detailed with a hand-embroidered applique, which is using vintage fabric or also repurposed fabric, because I tend to have a hard time throwing any fabric away. So years ago, many years ago, long before there was such a thing as a Burberry store, I had a Burberry coat. And after many years of use, the lining ripped out. And so I went to have the lining replaced. And when I did, I asked them to save the lining. So even one of the appliques is made out of old Burberry fabric. And each one of these has been hand embroidered by a refugee woman.
Wow. Okay, wait a minute. Let's talk about that. But first of all, let's so we could say there's a little piece of you in every one of your t-shirts, more or less.
Well, exactly. And part of the whole concept of the business, t-shirt aside, is that I want to honor the stories of the makers as well as the wearers. So I want to tell the stories behind, because unfortunately, so many people don't even realize that there's a lot of hands, therefore a lot of people, a lot of stories before the garments ever even get to the store, let alone to our closets. And I just think that people don't even really realize that. Going back to what we were talking about, that clothing used to be treasured and it was a keepsake. And I feel like nowadays, well, it's the truth. Clothing is now disposable. People buy it and, wear it a few times and then they get rid of it and discard it.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's just a lot of wastefulness in the industry. And over the course of the last 5-10 years, I've done a lot of research and found a lot of disturbing statistics, both about the wastefulness of the industry, from an environmental impact.
Yeah.
The global and apparel textile industry accounts for more CO2 emissions than international flights and shipping combined.
I'm sorry. Hold on. On clothes?
On clothes. The global apparel and textile industry accounts for more CO2 emissions than combining international flights and maritime travel.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. That's huge.
It's huge.
Let me ask, what is it about it? Is it the production of the clothes or the throwing away of the clothes, or combination?
It's probably a combination, but most of it is coming from the production of the clothes.
Okay.
And that's the CO2. There's also, they're using more water.
Oh.
It's just really, really, from an environmental impact, then you've got the fact that people think that they're, giving things away to Goodwill or, quote unquote recycling. Well, actually only less than 1% of textiles are recycled into something else.
Wow.
It's all ending up in landfills. So there's that whole piece of it, which is, a sustainability piece of it. But there's also the person, the people behind it. And all of it is important to me. Trying to really have a low carbon footprint on my company in general and the shirts, but I'm also really focused on the humans,
right?
The human connection, the people behind the clothes. I'm really committed to making the garments in the United States, to knowing who my makers are, going to the factories, meeting with hopefully sharing their stories if they're so inclined. The refugee woman that I've been working with, sharing her story, again, if she is interested in doing so. But behind everything that we put on our bodies, there's many hands that have touched that, whether it's from the fibers and yarns that have been grown, whether it's from cotton in the fields, or whether it's my T-shirts are made of modal, which is a sustainable fabric because it's made of beech trees. But someone has harvested that. Someone has spun the yarn into fabric, and someone has actually, even the hands of someone putting it on a truck and shipping it to you. And then someone else is making the garment. Someone else is embroidering the applique. So there's many, many people who have touched these garments before they end up in our closets.
This is really interesting about all these facts that I didn't know. And now I'm feeling really guilty about my clothing. But
it's all right. I'm over it.
I'm over it. We're moving on. But I did want to ask, so you knew all this stuff.
Yes.
You had all this in your head. What did you do to do the business? How did you prepare your plan? What were you thinking of? Tell me a little bit about how you got there.
Well, that's been part of the journey that's still ongoing. And, it's a slow process, but I think that good things take time, right?
Right.
And so whether it's a wine or whether it's a great shirt. So I started doing a lot of research, and I have been part of a couple programs. I most recently interviewed for and was accepted into the Chicago Fashion Incubator, the Designer in Residence program, which is actually housed in Macy's.
Oh, great.
And it was terrific because I was asked to interview for it back in November. I interviewed in December and was accepted, and the program has been virtual because of COVID. So from January to June, it's been virtual, and now they've just opened up the space. So I'm really excited to be amongst many designers who have gone through the program. They're not all on site still. Most people move on after 6 months or a year, but they've had designers go on to Project Runway and beyond. So I'm very honored to be a part of that program.
Right.
But I've learned so much through the mentorship that they offer, whether that's business mentorship or production, marketing, all different aspects of it. And prior to that, I was part of a program called Factory 45. So that's kind of where I got my feet wet and learned about all the different steps that you take. Because again, things just don't show up in the stores on a hanger.
Right. So how did you find these groups to help that mentor you and available programs? Because I feel like if we're talking about how you take an idea from this, I want to make sure my listeners know if they have an idea, how do they do the research? Do you did it through a fashion institute or fashion industry link or.
Yeah, it's really I don't even remember what I first, good old Google. I don't remember what I first Googled, but I think initially it was sustainable fashion, because that will right now probably Factory 45 will show up at the top. And that has been a very important part, as we just talked about, of my journey, is the sustainability and how can I launch a sustainable line. And then the Chicago Fashion Incubator, being local, I happen to know and worked with in the past the director, Anna Hobet Diaz. And so she is the one who encouraged me to apply. And so from there, and since that's local, it's been, it was virtual and now it's in person, but that was, easy for me to do. But now that they're able to offer the virtual, they're attracting people from around the country. So that's great for them as well. Yes, or for anybody who's listening and has that interest. But I think it's just knowing what's important to you. For me, it was fashion, which I've always had a passion for. And it was also the ethical and sustainable introduction of a new fashion product, because we all know we probably don't need another garment put out into the world. But I feel like, I really believe that if we all educate ourselves. You can buy smarter, and you can, I can design better, and we can buy a little smarter. If you know a little bit more about what's happening in the industry, and you can choose to buy something, whether it's my t-shirt, because you can wear the same t-shirt from day to night, you can wear it all 4 seasons, or anything else that you're looking at. And it's just little changes that you can make. I mean, every single thing in my wardrobe isn't sustainable, but I really pay attention now to labels. I pay attention to looking at the label. Where is it made? Is it made in the US? Is it made in China? Things made in the US, unfortunately, are going to cost more money, but there's a reason for that. The labor costs more here, and you want to make sure that people are being paid a fair wage.
Do you think there's a whole drive in the industry to turn towards sustainability for clothing? Do you feel like that's really a drive?
Yes, I do feel that some recent research I did for my business plan shows that the new wave is that it's going more mainstream to go more sustainable and more ethical. And consumers are willing to pay more for that.
Yeah.
Not all, but that they're also continuing to champion fairness and social justice.
That's great.
And that's a huge part of it, is the human rights. If you really dig deeper, and I don't want to go into all the ugliness, but the human rights behind many of these big brand names, that there's been a huge push. I follow an organization called Fashion Revolution.
Mm-hmm. And
they have, ever since there was a huge factory collapse back in 2013, and that's another reason for this. Over 1,100 people were killed. Many of them were children, and most of them were women.
That was in
Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, yeah, that's what I remember that. Yeah, that was awful.
So, to this day, things have changed, yes, for the better, but there's still many garment workers are working under poor working conditions, low pay. There's a lot of gender violence. Many of them are being forced. It's slave labor.
Yeah.
So I really want to shed a light on that without being negative, but I just feel like people need to be aware of that. Hands may have bled for the tennis shoes you're wearing or the t-shirt you're wearing. But again, it's just being aware of things, and maybe next time you go shopping, you will look at a label and you'll think, even if you go ahead and buy something made in China, sometimes it's hard to get around that. But at least you're aware that, wow, there's somebody who really labored over making this garment.
Sure.
I mean, they're not just made by a machine. They're made by hands.
By hand. Let me ask you one more question, and we can wrap this up.
Yes.
Because this has been great and so informative, and thank you for doing this, Pam. But I do want to ask you, okay, when are you launching? Do you have a date for launch?
I am hoping to, I say launch, so it'd be more of a soft launch for me, but I am looking to have a small production done this fall.
Okay.
And then I'm still working out how I want to do this, because I feel like the social media has led to a lot of this fast fashion. So I'm trying to figure out, I probably need to be out there on social media and be selling on a website. But I also am someone who loves, as I said before, local boutiques and shopping local and supporting boutique owners.
Right.
So I see myself being in the retail environment and really having that human connection, whether it's doing trunk shows or pop-ups, and being able to connect with the consumer and the ultimate wearer of the garment.
Yeah. Well, I wish you all the luck in the world. I know we talked a little bit a while ago, and I'm really excited to hear the progression and how you took this idea and all the things that you're passionate about and then turned it into a business idea. So I'm thrilled, and we're going to look for Qui Collections in the fall, right?
Yes. There's one other thing I want to say that is I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
That our sense of value is not defined by the latest trends, but by the beautiful stories behind our clothes. And I really am passionate about giving back. So I'm working on how that looks, but there will be a portion of all of the t-shirts that is given back to local communities, whether that's the unhoused, whether that's supporting mental health. That's something that I'm really passionate about as well.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel you on that one. So I have a similar passion. Well, thanks again, Pam.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, my pleasure.
All right. Well, welcome back, Lois. I thought we were going to start to talk. I thought I would pick up on our introduction. I would be really intrigued to talk about the stats and women entrepreneurs. And I found myself thinking whole different things coming out of that interview. So I can't wait to see what you think and what you heard.
Well, it's interesting to hear, from a true entrepreneur today, which I think, entrepreneurship, just the way, businesses work, the capabilities available to us, the ability to work on social media and connect with people. I mean, it's a very different world today than even before COVID, right? I mean, it's interesting to hear about how she took this approach.
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went coming out of the interview that Jeanne had with Pam. And I just jotted down, a few of the things that I thought were different, or at least typical of entrepreneurship in today's day and age. And it started for Pam as a personal passion, and linking that personal passion to volunteer work, as kind of the foundation or the inception of the idea, and must have meant she wanted to do something meaningful, right?
Yeah. I think that's one of the maybe differences maybe it's not a difference. It's just, I was really excited to hear how, being an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily, you don't go into it, say, man, I wish I could make more money. So how am I going to make more money? That's probably not going to help you be successful. It needs to be something more meaningful that is driving you to work the hours or commit to it that allows you to be successful. And yeah, it's something like that is much bigger than just, man, I wish I had a bigger paycheck.
Yeah, and I feel like you have to tell a story today, right? I mean, maybe you always did have to tell a story, but it was a financial story, or it was a marketing plan story, right? And today's stories are more about, what inspired you. And then the next two things that she really gave some insights on were, linking her passion to sustainability, which is a big buzz concept right now. It's a very popular concept. And also trying to establish that connection between the clothing and the people who were engaged in making the clothing. And both of those things are such kind of hot buttons in today's society that it feels like a story just makes itself around that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way, the world is a smaller place these days, right? And the ability to make connections with your supply chain, make connections with your consumers. You don't need a storefront anymore. There's ways that you can operate much more virtually. And I think maybe that's a way to drive success more. I don't know. Is it easier to be an entrepreneur these days than what it used to be, simply because the way we operate is a lot more, at your fingertips than potentially it used to be?
Yeah. And then for certain personality types, like clearly for Pam, it actually sets up a little bit of a conundrum, right? Because she described toward the end that, she's a people person, and her passion is, she knows she needs a social media presence, and she wants to, take advantage of all the latest ways of buying and delivering and exchanging goods. But she has this affinity for retail and for people and for, things coming into a store. And so on the one hand, it's easier. On the other hand, it's like, if you have that personality and that draw, maybe it's conflictive. Maybe it's harder. I don't know.
I don't know either. But, I think it's exciting to hear from someone who, just had this passion and just this, I don't know if it's risk or just this energy just to go make it happen. It's inspiring, right? Because we all may have our passions that we think, someday, maybe, after I retire, maybe I can do something. But, she made it real, and she made it something that, she now is fully committed to and making something out of it. And I think it's just inspiring to see.
I can't help but wonder. I wonder if there's a checklist, for today's entrepreneur versus the checklist of the past, where you had to go to the Chamber of Commerce, and, you had to find a coach for a marketing plan and all the, and like today's list, I felt like, she checked a lot of the boxes that I would think would be on a list today. I was laughing to myself because I thought there might be a couple of things missing. Like, I didn't hear Shark Tank, so
was waiting for that. And then I thought, like, what about the GoFundMe? You know, like, I think that's got to be on some people's checkboxes. So,
yeah. Well, you know what? I think probably if you really have a passion, you're going to figure out how you're going to get there, right? And so
that's right.
But even if you think of all the different, I don't know how many folks you hear from that started small, like on some community, right? They wanted to go, figure out how to do something, and that crowdsourcing, right? People just start chiming in, and you start to build some energy. It's there's so many different ways now to build energy around a topic, and we just got to be savvy enough to figure out and have the, the sense of commitment to make it happen. That's probably the key. That right commitment to something.
That's right. Well, I hope we didn't stray too far from, I think, one of the reasons that Jeannie was really excited about this interview. And that is that, between COVID and just, women and our roles in work-family balance, we do have, maybe an edge in the entrepreneurial spirit sometime. And I think in recent times, numbers that show that when we redirect or reorient and try to balance things, we do more often, turn to being our entrepreneurial selves. So, maybe some folks out there will get some ideas by Pam's journey.
I hope so. And I think it does. It does, show us that even if we're a little bit frustrated or feeling unfulfilled or want to do something bigger, right? Do something that we always wanted to do. Now is the time. Now's the time.
That's right.
So hopefully people take away with this, with that topic.
Great.
But good to talk with you again.
Thanks.
And I'm looking forward to the next interview.
Me too. Not sure where Jeannie's going to take us, but, we'll find out.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on ISG Digital Dish. If you like our podcast, subscribe and please rate and review us. Thanks.